Can you guess how much I wrote in a year? 4 paragraphs, because I would write and delete and write and delete and write and delete. That's how deeply rooted my perfectionism conversation was.
Who are you?
I've always been a talker since I was little, and now I make a lot of dough. A good amount of money to talk. I wasn't raised with a lot of other people of color in school, so I was like a minority in a minority, and I didn't really understand, I think, most of my life, what it quote unquote felt like to be beautiful. Sometimes it's not the success that gives you the most valuable information, it is the failure. I'm learning that in my joy is where I find the most success and where I create the most success. So the more I achieve, the more depleted I become because I have not optimized for what truly feels good. Entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey. I am so devoted to myself. It's like devotion to your God. I can intellectualize anything. I practice authenticity. I practice vulnerability. I'm not talking about pity and sympathy. I'm talking about empathy. Holding people high is a part of that. Not settling for BS is a part of that. Calling bullshit with bullshit, it's like a part of that.
What does it mean to be confident?
Ooh.
Welcome to today's episode of Getting to Know You. I'm your host, Cameron Edward Benton, and on today's episode, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Magalie Renee Hayes. Magalie is a compassionate leadership expert, the CEO of Workplace Catalyst, and a transformational coach who helps mission-driven leaders align with their highest selves. In this episode, we dive into the power of using joy as your compass, how she finally overcame her crippling perfectionism, and how she transformed her greatest shame into her biggest moneymaker. Something I'd love for you to listen for is her embodied standard of excellence, the way she speaks with clarity, dresses with intention, and leads with deep empathy. Not sympathy and pity, but a deep understanding of who you are and who you're capable of becoming. So without further ado, here is Getting to Know Magalie Renee Hayes. Who are you?
Oh, this is so great. I'm so happy to answer that question. I am a woman who is learning what joy means, and that's the bigger picture, and learning to live in joy and enjoy the journey. Who am I in the world and what do I do? I'd say, so part of who I am is what I do. And what do? I support people with confidence building, and I support, I like to think that I am supporting the world in living into compassion and leadership. So confidence, compassion, leadership, all surrounding finding my joy. That's who I am.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the first thing you said, I think, was someone who's learning to live into your joy. So I'm curious for you, what does that mean? Like, what are you learning about your joy?
I'm learning that in my joy is where I find the most success and where I create the most success. So success is something, it feels good. And when I feel like things aren't working or success isn't happening, I'm very type A, I'm very driven. And when I feel like success isn't happening, usually it's because I'm focused on the outcome. Usually it's because I'm in comparison. It's because I'm a perfectionist and I'm not practicing moving out of my perfection and just letting it be what it is. And the root of all those things is being stuck in my fear rather than being pulled into my joy, being led and guided by my joy. And so that looks like the things that I love to do. That looks like feeling good. That looks like nurturing myself with foods and with the things that I nurture myself with outside of food, right? Like what I listen to, the music, my hobbies. It looks like just like living life in a way that feels good.
Yeah. I love what you said around perfectionism and joy. And it's super funny because like I have actually been in the last week or 2 weeks or something like that, like literally been like joy has been my focus. And I went through this whole thing talking with ChatGPT where I was like, hey, like I don't like how I'm doing things, like if that makes sense. Like I realized like I wanted structure back in my life, but I was also realizing that I wanted to find structure in a different way. And so it was talking to me about like creating joy as my compass and like using structure to create, like how can I optimize for joy? Like Tim Ferriss talks a lot about like
if you're optimizing your life, like make sure you know what you're optimizing for,
Oh,
right? And that, right, it's great. And so that came back through me where I was like, okay, like how do I do this? And like even I was creating some SOPs for my team and I was like, man, like I just felt so drained. And I realized there's a part of me that was like overriding my body's like pain signals to go create this thing. And I talked with ChatGPT afterwards because I've been using it a lot. And I was just like, I noticed that this happened. It's like, well, what if you like found like it's your business, so you can make the SOP fun. Like you can
yeah.
make it something that is like enjoyable and enjoyment based to you. And I also have been resonating with what you've been saying around perfectionism because that's something I've been actively aware of on a deeper level lately for myself. So I'm curious with you with joy and perfectionism and be feeling authentic, like all of these different little pieces for yourself. Like what like is a tangible like 3D example that you have stepped into to like break through your perfectionism and like find and follow your joy more?
Oh, that's so good. Your questions are phenomenal. So, let's see. I want to pause on it a bit and think. There are so many different things I'm doing, like actual practices. But I'd say even before the practices, like I don't know how I'm going to answer this question, so I'm just going to fill into it. So even before the practices, what comes up for me is the intention and the intention for my life. So when I would in the past think about success, I would see the standard status quo evidence of success, right? Very 3D, very material, very titles, very amount of money that you're making in the account or from the clients, very amount of clients you're getting, like very that, very how much are you seeing, where are you seeing, all of those things. And a lot of that I made happen in a lot of different ways. I've been on television, I've, you know, been a commentator in different topics around confidence and compassion, et cetera, et cetera. But joy, that those things don't bring joy. They bring a sense
Mm,
of accomplishment and achievement. But the mindset I needed to shift was, but what feels good?
mm,
What really feels good? And what do I want to keep doing over and over and over? And in the process of achieving, does it feel good? So you just talked about the way that you optimize. So when I hit certain levels of achievement, the more I thought about it, and I'm in that moment right now, which we will probably get to at some point, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't enjoying the process. And if I'm not enjoying the process and not enjoying how I feel once I get the thing,
mm.
then getting more of the thing isn't going to make me enjoy life anymore. It's only
Right.
going to deplete me more. So the more I achieve, the more depleted I become because I have not optimized for what truly feels good.
Mm,
So now it's sort of an unraveling and a deciding, well, in what ways could achieving feel good? If I was
mm,
to achieve, what would be the achievement, or in what way could I achieve it that would feel good the whole way around? It would feel good to have, it would feel good to be working towards, it would feel juicy, it would light me up. And that's what like joy is. I kind of forgot the question, but the first thing is the mindset.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that and the question, I think that what doesn't matter as much as like the answer. I think that you evoke, right? Because I think like so much of what you just said is spot on about like feeling good, right? Like I think that is like one of the coolest things, and it's really in line with a lot of the lessons I've been learning through my podcast, my friendships, and stuff like that too. Is I've had a couple different neurofeedback practitioners and teachers, people who've been in the lineage for like 30 plus years and stuff. Some of those like 50 years. And one of the things that they've talked about is the importance of like being able to tune back into like how your body is feeling. Right. So I had Dr. Cynthia Curson on, and she gives this example of like, you know, a lot of times when they hook people up and they do the thing, they're like, okay, like, how do you feel? And they're like, oh, I feel tired. And they're like, no, no, no. Like, that's a story about how your body is feeling. How do
Mm.
you feel? Do you feel tension? Do you feel heat? Do you feel pleasure? Do you feel pain? Right. And it's like she refers to it as being over reliant on our prefrontal cortex, right? So we're relying too much on this area that like creates these stories about our world. And we're so disconnected from this like deeper hardwired felt sense. And then to your point, I think when we start turning into that felt sense where we're like, oh, this is actually a pretty strong beacon on what feels good,
Yep.
and learning to pause when there's tension, learning to tune in and trust this like really ancient system uh, a lot more is seems to be pretty helpful. I'm curious for you, like, do you have a practice to help yourself continue to like navigate that? Is it kind of just a generalized awareness? Like, what have you been doing for yourself to do that?
Yeah, so that was that's great segue. So from that mindset, once I shifted that, then I did apply practices and I do several practices.
Mm,
So one, the first and probably the most foundational and important for me was meditating every day.
mm.
So that's the one thing for me. There's a book, I think you're the one who introduced me to that book.
The one thing.
Coincidentally, but not coincidentally, right? No accidents. The one thing, it was a great book. And also the one thing for me is meditation. If I do that every morning, I usually combine prayer and meditation and some kind of like, I do my own concoction of like chakra balancing, prayer and meditation. And if I do that for 10 minutes every morning, the day is just a different day. It is a day, it started already exactly the way I wanted it to. And it gives me the tool, like foundational tools
Mm,
for navigating all those things, the comparison, the perfectionism, et cetera, et cetera. Another practice that I've been more recently doing that helps me drop into my body is tapping.
mm.
So I do the tapping method.
Can you
And
explain what just what tapping is to
yeah,
people who can't hear?
tapping, there's an acronym for it, and it starts with an E. I'm gonna mess it up, you guys.
It's EFT, so
Thank
emotional
you.
freedom technique.
EFT. I'm gonna say EMT, and I'm like, it's not an M. EFT. So it's this method where you're basically calming your nervous system. And the way I look at it is to give my body time to catch up
Mm,
to my North Star and my vision. And my vision is peace and compassion and confidence. And so when I tap, I do this EFT method. It's like I tap in these different places on my body and I say a thing. Usually I talk about what I'm feeling and experiencing, and then I say, and
mhm,
I accept and I love myself anyways.
mm,
And I might say a number of things. I might also talk about the thing that I'm feeling anxious about. I'm feeling anxious about XYZ, but I love myself anyways and I accept the situation and it's all going to be fine. And then eventually I'll tap, maybe I do it for about 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 1 minute. And I move from whatever the anxiety was to
mm,
acceptance of whatever the situation is to my vision, right? I know sometimes I feel anxious about, and I love myself anyways, and I'm creating, and the universe has my back. And I go through that process. So tapping is like, oh, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, like transformational in the moment for the stress,
yeah.
in the moment to interrupt. Sometimes I might snap and interrupt myself. And then, all else fails, I call a friend. I have amazing human beings in my life and I will reach out for support. And I go, I need 5 minutes. I'm not a trauma dump person because that's like vampirical energy, right? We want people to be there for us. We want to be there for people, but I'm not trauma dumping. I'll say, I need 5 minutes. I need to shift my belief around something. I need to vent about
Mm,
something, whatever it is. I need your perspective.
yeah.
So those are the top three that I use.
Yeah, yeah. I love the one around tapping too, because it's something that I've used a lot throughout my life, and I like it too for the same reason you talked about it just being very physiological, right? It's very similar to like breath
Okay.
work. So you're just involving the body directly versus trying to like negotiate with your mind, or talking to a friend is great, assuming the friend has the capacity or has whatever that you need, or depending on your own relationship with humans, it can be difficult to do that. But like having that body thing, I think is just so helpful. And for anybody who's skeptical too, that might be listening, like there's actually like a fair amount of research, like on it, and it actually like does work. And there's a lot of like other cool things, like you're tapping acupuncture points and other pieces that are kind of going along with it. And even if Magalie said, like, even if part of it is just that you're giving yourself a psychological break, like, give it a shot. And if it works for you, cool. If it doesn't, no worries. Um, I guess pivoting back to, that conversation around like perfectionism, I'm curious, like, where do you feel like perfectionism has, um, been some of the more challenging areas for you to break through and kind of really like let go in?
Oh, I have a really good story for this one. So I've wanted to write a book since I was really young. So
Mm,
it's my dream to be an author, like a world-renowned author, and to write multiple books, right?
mm,
If I could sit and have a thick view and just write all day, that's what I would do. So I wanted to write a book. I had an idea for a book. This is like 8 years ago or so. And I was doing interior design for school. And I decided I wanted to write this book so that those who couldn't afford my services had the content. So I was writing this book for like a year. I was waking up at 5 in the morning to write this book for about a year. Can you guess, Cam? Can you guess how much I wrote in a year?
oh, uh, I do, probably a couple 100,000 words, like
That's
200,
so
300,000.
wonderful. Listen to that guess. Absolutely not. I wrote four, get ready, brace yourself, 4 paragraphs, not chapters, not chapters, y'all. 4 paragraphs. Because I would write and delete and write and delete and
Mm,
write and delete. And this was, I thought it was writer's block or whatever. I was making up all kinds of reasons why this might be. I just don't know. Maybe I'm just not a good writer, et cetera, et cetera. It was perfectionism. That's how deeply rooted
mm,
my perfectionism conversation was. Like, I couldn't formulate the right sentence
hmm.
enough to write more than 4 paragraphs in 1 year of writing.
Wow.
So there you
Wow.
go.
And so
That's how
for
deep.
for you, because you said you were waking up at like 5 a.m. every day, I'm assuming you're not going to work, 5:05 a.m. So I'm assuming that's a good amount of time. Were you just sitting in there, literally going back and forth and just like struggling with yourself for that period of time? Like, what would you do during that time?
Yeah, some of that is like I'm being dramatic for the story. I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, but I woke up at
Yeah.
5 a.m., I don't know, a good handful of days every week.
Hmm.
And it was hours of time. It'd be like I'd
Wow.
give myself 2 hours to write and I would just write and delete and write and rewrite. It was just bananas. It was
Hmm.
it was unhealthy. I'm certain that I went through a week or two where I didn't write, but I was pretty consistent overall.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for a year, waking up fairly consistently and giving myself real time sitting at a laptop to
Wow.
write, perfectionism was very much in my way.
Yeah. What did you like feel about yourself, or what was like the story you made up about yourself after that like year and having like 4 paragraphs done and going through that work? Because I'm imagining that must be also stressful in some way.
Yeah, it was really depressing, I think, but at the same time, there's a reason for everything. And I'm very grateful to that amount of effort that I put in and the fact that I still couldn't crack the code
Hmm.
because it gave me information. And sometimes it's not the success that gives you the most valuable information, it is the failure.
Hmm.
And so in that, I had a decision to make. So the story I made up was I'm not good enough. The story I made up was I have writer's block. I'm not a good writer was another story. I don't have what it takes. That was probably the biggest overarching story. I'm not enough. I don't have what it takes. And I also I didn't take no from myself for an answer.
Hmm.
I didn't give up. I was like, no, no, other people have done it.
Hmm.
There's no way that there isn't something else going on. In other words, I didn't argue for my limitations. I just gave you
Hmm.
4 of them, right? 4 stories. I
Yeah.
didn't keep arguing to defend the stupidity, right?
Hmm.
Or the limiting beliefs. We weren't doing that. Instead, I thought to myself, there has to be a way around this. So I took a writer's workshop. Bestseller in a weekend, Alicia Dunham's. I will always shout her out. She's amazing. Excuse me. So I did her program. And in that program, I met a bunch of people and I just felt their energy was different. I followed the breadcrumbs. I decided I wasn't going to take no for an answer, even if the no came from me. I found this workshop, took the workshop, and started finding like minded people. Other people, other women in my case, were going through the same process of wanting to write a book. And there was something about them. I had just moved to LA at the time. Their vibe was just different. They were really positive. I felt so inspired. And I go, do you guys know each other? And they're like, well, we don't all know each other, but we've all gone through personal development. So, of course, I dug into that. It's very LA culty, but I was super, super down to try different things to break through this conversation.
Hmm.
And in my case, personal development was the way that I did that. It was one of the main gifts that I gave myself was finding a program, doing the program, and looking at those conversations. Why do they
Hmm.
show up for me? What is in the way? How do I get in my own way? And eventually I worked through it, you know?
Yeah. What did you do to, I mean, you talk about taking the workshops, speaking to other people, having kind of your mindset shifts, but like, what did you actually do to break through that? Did you end up just like writing stream of consciousness? Was it like having friends that kept you accountable? Like, what were some of the things that like grounded you to be able to actually write the book eventually?
I think the biggest thing was the mindset.
Hmm.
I was never a bad writer. I was really, really good writer,
Hmm.
or at least halfway decent, right? Without
Yeah.
comparing myself to some insanely amazing writer like
Sure.
Maya Angelou.
Right.
Without doing that, I was a decent writer. So that wasn't a problem. The
Hmm.
problem was always the conversation that I was having with myself,
Hmm.
which was getting in the way. And then mechanism only came after that. So the
Hmm.
mechanism would not have solved this problem. I want to be
Hmm.
very, very clear. You can find 50 different methods of how to get a book out, and none of it will work if you don't get out of your own way,
Totally.
mentally and emotionally and spiritually. So I did that first.
Hmm.
And then I started to do the same thing. I got up at a certain time every day. So I don't think I did it every day, but I feel like I did it I'm going to try and remember. I feel like I did it weekdays. So it's like
Hmm.
4 or 5 days a week. And I would
Sure.
get up at 5 in the morning and I'd write for like an hour. I gave myself an hour or two. I
Hmm.
wasn't super rigid. Like I just said, just sit here for an hour and a half at minimum. Sometimes I did more if I was in flow. And I just gave myself also a deadline.
Hmm.
By when? I gave
Hmm.
myself a by when. And, now I don't remember needing real hardcore accountability. I think maybe because I was just off my personal development sort of deep dive. So I had that
Hmm.
like motivation was on 10, right? But like now, which I am trying to write, and I am in the process of writing my next book. And what I would do now, for sure, I get to have accountability. There's no doubt about it. Like
Hmm.
I have a by when, which I haven't set, by the way. I haven't even put myself on the line yet, y'all. I'm just doing it when it feels good. But at some point, I'm going to give myself a by when. So by when will you have how much done?
Hmm.
And then I'll implement accountability. So either I'll co-write with friends, which I have done in spurts,
Hmm.
or I will have an accountability partner, buddy that I check in with and say, here's how much I've gotten done.
Hmm.
What was in the way where you didn't get something done? Here's what I need to do next, right?
Yeah.
So those kinds of those structures work for me. Another thing that works for me is a little weird in idiosyncrasy. I love to write with sound on.
Hmm.
So I write with there's a white noise app that has a bunch of different sounds, and I love the jungle sound. So it's like it makes me feel like I'm in a rainforest and I hear birds and running water and like that just I don't know if it puts me into theta, which is a great place to be when you're trying to channel and write from your spirit and from your soul and not just from your brain.
Hmm.
But something about that sound really puts me into a flow state. So I
Hmm.
use that.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with this, like kind of tying back to the earlier conversation around like joy. How do you navigate these like systems or structures and stuff with something like joy? Because I know for me at least, a lot of times when I have gone to like, I actually am not, for me personally, like I'm not a huge fan of like accountability because I don't find joy in that. Like I find
Mm.
that it creates more of for me like this like I don't know, this game of feeling like forced, and I want to like figure out how do I get myself to do something from a place of joy versus like a force. So I'm like, how do you navigate these two different tensions for yourself, or do you just find joy in the accountability? Like, how do you navigate that?
I love this question. Also, Cam, you and I are so similar, right? Like, oh my God. When I hear you talk, I'm like, I know. Like my friend is that way too. There's so much in common in terms of how we think. So I've gone through that exact thing. And a lot of that comes from my not wanting to be told what to do because I had
Mm.
fairly domineering parents. That's for better or for
Mm.
worse, right? Some of that was great. Some of it was not at all. And so I often feel like things can feel like pressure and
Mm.
forcing. Even if it's something I want to do, I can feel like I want to rebel against an imaginary force, which is
Mm-hmm.
just my younger child self wanting to do what she wants to do.
Mm.
And so I actually, going back to mindset and perspective, which always for me trumps the mechanism, I had to shift my conversation around discipline. And so I no longer think about structure and habits and systems as discipline, I look at it, and routine as discipline, I look at it as devotion.
Mm,
Like, I am so devoted to myself. It's like devotion to your God, right? If you believe in God
hmm
or your higher purpose or a deity, that level of devotion has such a juicy, divine feeling. Like my body, the hairs are
mm,
standing up on my arms because it feels so good and it feels ritualistic. So I create a ritual in it. Even the
mm.
accountability, I use that term because I feel like most people get that and less people will get the woo woo language that I use.
Yeah.
Probably not your audience because they're all down, right? But they're all down with the woo. But I think what really serves is to even accountability. I think of it as connection. So I love to be in relationship with my friends and with people that are up to big things like I am. And so I will co-create with them. And that's how I see accountability. And devotion is how I see discipline. So I hope that helps.
No, I think that that's great. I don't know if you follow. He's one of my favorite people on the internet, and his name's the Healthy Gamer, and he was like a gaming addict, and then dropped out of college, went to India, became a monk for 7 years, and then came back, and then graduated with a 2.3 GPA or something, and then got into Harvard Medical School, and now is like a Harvard trained psychiatrist. It's a really fascinating, wild journey on his part. And one of the things I heard him talk about recently, he's like, stop focusing on discipline and start focusing on love. Like I'm,
Beautiful.
shortchanging it, but he's like, if you figure out what you actually love, you will never need discipline, and it's
Oh,
so much more powerful as a motivation. And I also, it's again, I always feel like you and I have this like cadence of speaking with each other because we were for context for the audience, like we were in a really intense personal growth program together for a while and had a lot of time where we were seeing each other all the time, and then we've both gone our own lives and gone in different directions. But like we've also like we'll probably get on a phone call like once a year, twice a year, and like there's always like this catch up and this kind of like weird synchronistic thing that happens, I notice with our conversations. And it's so funny because you're talking about like devotion and ritual. And maybe my brain is just like picking up these because it's what my brain is going through. But like I've literally been in such a similar place for myself where I've been like really shifting to like, what does like this devotion like look like? How do I cultivate ritual in my life? Because I'm finding that for me, I really enjoy ritual. I enjoy making something sacred, of like taking that time to cultivate something, to tune into a different energy, to shift my mind space and like be in this thing. Whether that's just like a genetic thing that I feel and it works for me or whatever, or there's something actually real there. I don't know, but I find that to be really the case. So I'm really glad that you mentioned ritual. And I'm curious, like, if you're open to sharing, like, what is like a ritual that you have found that really works for you personally? What's something that you like really love and brings you joy that also helps cultivate this devotion energy in a way that is meaningful to you?
so this is so interesting because I think making the non-work related areas of my life ritualistic has made everything else feel so much more divine.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've got a process going that's work related. And when I talk about work, I talk about writing and creating and thinking about concepts and all that. And creating, well, we'll talk about it if we get there, but curriculum writing and all sorts of things. But I think it's the creating rituals around all the other areas of my life. So in the morning, for instance, I don't book meetings before a certain time, and I am very, very boundaried around.
Mm,
Like, I'm just pretty rigid about how my mornings start off. And excuse me. And what I find is, like, I have a morning routine where I'll drink like hot lemon water or hot key lime. I use key limes and I'll use hot citrus water. And just like that process of even squeezing the lemon, squeezing the lime, like
mm,
using my hand. It's going to sound so simple, but I love this process and I love like the warm water and then like sitting down and drinking it and how the water feels when it goes down.
mm,
And I don't do anything during that time. I literally just sit there and drink this warm citrus water. And it just feels so good. And I know it's healing me and I know it's going down. And it's like helping me digest the food that I had the night before. Like everything about it feels like such an honoring of myself. And that just feels really good. And it's like a simple thing. Same thing when I make cacao. Some mornings I want a little bit of a boost, so I'll make this cacao and maca drink and I'll stir it with the whisk. And even it takes me 5, maybe 6 minutes to make. And I will literally whisk it for those 6 minutes. And I'm super focused. I'm not rushing through that process. I'm like making it a ritual. Sometimes I'll remember to do the following and sometimes I won't. But sometimes I'll remember to like, as I'm whisking it, I'll say an intention around what do I want this drink? What intention do I want to pour into it? How is it opening my heart? It sounds like just these small things, but making like life a ritual outside of the quote unquote work that I do or the daily have tos, right? They're not have tos for me anymore, but they can feel like have tos sometimes. They feel like obligations. And I think that's the whole conversation. It's like, but what about the other areas of your life? Where can you create rituals and self-love and times to breathe and allow and like rest? That's another thing. Oh my God, naps? Ugh, I love naps. I love-
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that answer around creating rituals around the non-work parts of your life, and I agree. I mean, I think it's so important to, at least for me, to have these spaces where I'm able to consciously slow down and create breaks in rhythm. And I've been really fascinated by. I went to a Greek Orthodox church recently, just like on a whim that's nearby me. That's been by my apartment for 4 years, and I've always been curious about going in. And I just was like, I'm just gonna go in today. Super underdressed for for what I was going in for. But it was like you walked in and immediately there's like you smell the incense, you hear like the chanting, the acoustics of the room, and how brilliant and beautiful everything is in there. And it's so different from the Christianity that I was raised in, but also from everyday life. And I was like talking with ChatGPT about it. I was like, why are things like this? Like, what's their thought process on this stuff? And it's like, well, the intention of their space is to create this sense of heaven on earth in this space, right? And so from the incense to all these things, like you go in and you feel this immediately. And I actually really appreciated it. And similar, looking into even Jewish orthodoxy is like a lot of this sense of how do I bring in like the felt body into this spiritual experience, right? Versus simply how do I think about it? How do I, I don't know, ask Jesus in my heart, or how do I do this like intellectual thing, or whether I believe the right thing or wrong? It's like, no, it's like, is your body in devotion, in worship,
Oh,
right? Is your body like feeling into the mystery of something, or are you simply engaging in an intellectual exercise? Which, like, I love intellectual exercises. I
oh
love
God,
them to death.
I do too.
you know, I love stretching my mind, and there's devotion in that too. But like, there is something about bringing like how we feel into reality, right, and being a part of everything.
Yeah, I mean, oh God, nerd for life. Like I can intellectualize anything. And that's hot, right? I love it. And to your point, and that actually brings me to another element of devotion I didn't even mention, which is the environment. I am super, super, super sensitive. And even if I wasn't, I would give this advice, or if other people aren't, I will still give this advice and I know it works. Apparently, just looking at plants changes your nervous system. Just looking at plants, for example. So for me, before I had this, I know I'm having this with you. And I literally took out my lang my essential oils, and I put it on. And it's just like I set the space. And so there's a scent in my space already. There's a vibe in my space. I got my plants. I got like a dozen roses. Like everything is already set up that way. So there is something really powerful, super powerful that you just hit on around creating an environment of devotion. I'm looking at the back of your mandalas and everything in the
Hmm.
background. So
Yeah.
you definitely already do it. You already
Yeah.
do it.
Do you know who made those?
Did you?
Nixie.
Oh my goodness, this is
Yeah.
a friend of ours. One of my soul sisters. Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot she used to make those.
Yeah, those are my like soul
Got it.
mandalas that she made. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Um
Perfect. I can lie. No accidents. No accidents.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so much the same way, and it's really fascinating when you study like the importance of environment in general, right? And like how so much of how we grow up or who we become is a product of the environment that we are in. And I remember years ago being in college and watching some early YouTube video about free will, and this guy was talking about like he's like the one thing that like we don't really have free will. The only free will that we have is the will to choose our environment because our environment shapes us. Right. And it's like if you know that like if you put yourself in this place, this is going to change who you are. Are you happy with where you are? Right. And that's like physically how your actual decor space is. Like my space is like intentionally designed to encourage creativity. Right. So I have lots of different things. I have things that like bounce off and draw my attention in one way and then draw it in another way so that my brain is intentionally bouncing to different spaces. And the smells, I mean, like for anybody who's been into, I don't know, when you walk into like one of those like crystal shops or whatever, and you just like feel an energy exchange, and whether it's just like the sense or whether whatever it is, or, a health food store sometimes where they have lots of like aromatics and like there's a difference in light quality, or a really good bar even, right? You walk in and it's like, oh, it's sexy and loungy and there's red leather couches. Like you feel an energy shift depending on your environment. So like how you take care of that is really, really important, which, I almost want to tie this back into part of your journey has been going through a bunch of different changes and going from transformation to transformation to transformation. And one of the areas that you wrote this book in was, around design and around like,
Yeah.
interior design and creating different spaces. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the things like for you that you love about design, and like, what are the things that like you find are most important as you start to like design your own life for yourself?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yeah, I often think I was meant. So, what I do now is oddly enough very related to what I did then in terms of design. Whereas rather than designing, or in addition to designing an environment, I focus on designing a life and helping people design their life or helping them design their business or their leadership. And I think you can't separate one from the other. They're really intertwined and interconnected. Part of what I put together, actually, we haven't even launched this yet, but it's a whole, I'm still trying to name it, but it's like a whole life process for building confidence.
Mm,
And one of the key areas is environment. And I think about environment as the people and the spaces.
hmm
Create your environment, right? Your inner environment, your external environment. And so, uh, were you asking? I just want to remember, I took myself off track, but were you asking about how I create that environment for myself?
Um, yeah, yeah, I guess so. I mean, honestly, I think where I want to go with this, because my question was a little bit vague when I asked it, was like I'd really love to hear you and your journey in going from, being interested in uh interior design to designing your own life. Okay, like, can you start and just even walk us from the beginning of that to where you are now, essentially?
Yeah, that's okay. So that's different. Oof, yeah, that's so much. So I'm gonna try and do it in a concise way. Basically, before I even started, so my first business was an interior design for inner city schools. I would redesign inner city schools in the New York tri-state area. And that was my first business. I was doing jewelry design like as a side hobby before then. I fell in love with interior design, started this business, and I'm going to fast forward. There's just so many stories around that, but started this business. And that's then after that, I wanted to write a book that was based on for that business of interior designing, redesigning interiors for schools. And that led me to personal development, which I fell in love with.
Mm,
So the reason I even do what I do now is because and I always say this, as entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey. So everything in life is a spiritual journey if you choose to say yes to it. But entrepreneurship was the biggest thing for me. And in it, I had to grow through and break through my limiting beliefs in order to accomplish and achieve the things I wanted to accomplish in that. So it required that I go deep on myself. It required that I look at myself and all those places that were stopping me, et cetera, et cetera. And so in that wanting to write the book, being blocked, et cetera, I found personal development. I took this personal development course and like really immersed myself into inner reflection and doing inner work for a long time. I mean, it was like probably the beginning of it. The first stage was something like 8 months long in total. And then I would volunteer and I fell in love with coaching. So I fell in love with like the coaching aspect of personal development, like holding space for other people. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's what I was doing when I was doing interior design. Like I would do interior design for couples and their homes. In addition to the school, I would also do the homes. And I'd be designing, or I thought I was designing a cabinet and helping them navigate through that. But really I was holding space for them to talk about all the issues they had in their relationship. And the cabinet was just the metaphor for their life. So it was weird. Right?
Right.
People's spaces are so personal. So doing interior design for people, I was already holding space already. I'd already started that process. Also, my mom says I've been coaching since I was 5. So that's, I think I was just this was gonna happen one way or the other, right? But yeah, I fell in love with coaching. I fell in love with personal development, and I found myself. As I was trying to break through my limiting beliefs and things that were holding me back, I took another step forward, found more and more and more of myself. And in that, realized that I was meant to, in designing my own life, I was meant to support others in designing theirs. And my biggest gap was confidence. My biggest gap was a lack of self-esteem, a fear of speaking, a fear of being heard, a fear of being seen, judgment of self, a fear of being judged by others, perfectionism. All those things were my conversations. And so by default, I kind of support people now in breaking through those things to find themselves and design their own lives.
Yeah, got it. So going from like designing the interior of a building to designing the interior of your life.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. One thing I wanted to circle back to is like you mentioned at the beginning of that like entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey. Can you expand upon what you mean by spiritual in that regard?
Spiritual for me, without going too like esoteric, spiritual for me is
Well, and you can go as esoteric as you like here. You don't have to worry about like,
okay. I don't want to like overwhelm anyone.
No, I think
my ideas,
whatever
but
is authentic for you. Yeah.
yeah, what's authentic for me, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think what's authentic for me is I'm a spirituality person versus a religion person. And so I really think about source and the universe. And I believe everything is connected and everything is energy. And so when you decide that you desire something in your life, and for me, I desired to be an entrepreneur. I desired to work for myself. I had a deep desire. And now I have a deep calling to do the work that I do around confidence and compassion and leadership, right? And when you have that, so when you decide on a thing, you choose a thing, I feel like if you choose the path of enlightenment, which we maybe are never enlightened, right? Ever. We're always in the process of becoming, enlightened. But if you choose that path, then whatever it is you desire and you're working towards becomes the mechanism through which you will grow. If you choose growth and you choose consciousness and you choose enlightenment, then whatever you're deciding you're going to attempt to do in your life, maybe you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, or you want to be an entrepreneur, or you want to be a mom, or you want to be a partner or a friend or whatever it is, right? No, I'm not going to project entrepreneurship. That's my thing. But it can be anybody, whatever the thing is for you. That process, if you choose to grow, the universe will give you opportunities to elevate and in that and to grow in it. And so that to me is where I see entrepreneurship for me as a spiritual journey. It has been the mechanism through which I have been able to look at myself And I've been kind of sometimes, listen, forced. Okay. The universe will drag you. So I've been
Mhm.
dragged into
Mm.
looking at myself and being real and honest and authentic, or being delulu, like being totally delusional and saying F what everybody else thinks and F what everybody else wants to do and
Mm.
forget what society's telling me is okay and is possible. I'm going to, I'm going to be as delusional as I need to be to make this thing happen. So
Mm.
it's constant evolution. And that's what spirituality is to me. It's evolution.
Mm.
Yeah. Into love, right? Higher and higher, more and
Yeah.
more into love.
So for you, spirituality goes back into evolution. So being able to look at yourself, reinvent, grow. And you talked about, I thought this was interesting. You talked about like, choosing enlightenment and choosing a path of entrepreneurship that will kind of, I would say, lead you there. And I'm curious about that part. When you talk about like enlightenment, whether that's like a destination or a journey, like what does enlightenment mean to you?
I don't know that I'll ever really achieve enlightenment in this lifetime. I think so. Enlightenment, when I hear that word, I think of an end destination. And I don't know if I'll ever get to that end destination. I imagine it'll be some kind of return to complete light, right? Where I'm just a light being and there is
Mm.
no want or need or anything in me. And I'm just pure love and light. I don't know that that's what it means, but that's what I would imagine it means. But in this three-dimensional life, meaning in this iteration of this lifetime for me, I think I am a seeker. I
Mm.
think I am here to practice and to practice how quickly I can return to love,
Mm.
to practice how quickly I can connect with source, how quickly I can be the light in darkness, even if it's my own darkness, how grounded and strong and brave I can be to look at the things that I don't like about myself and accept them anyways.
Mm.
Um, so enlightenment feels in this lifetime like a practice, and it feels like many things. Um, I don't know that I don't feel like that answered the question, but that's the only way I know how to answer it.
No, I think it was great. I mean, what I heard back, I'll just, reflect back to you and then I'll let you take that is, a lot of what I heard was being willing to look at the hard parts of yourself and like love yourself more, right? Being able to love those parts of yourself that maybe you don't like, which like I think to your point, like challenges like the perfectionism stuff, because a lot of the perfectionism is this idea of wanting to maintain an image for others often, but even often for ourselves of like how I want to see myself, right? Versus, oh, actually, can I like accept, failures? And even like something that resonated with me, like you said earlier, was like, oh yeah, like I am maybe not as great as one of the best writers ever in Maya Angelou, right? And like I'm noticing that with like, myself where it's like, oh yeah, like when I'm comparing myself, I'm usually comparing myself to the best ever in something, right? Versus like actually like overall I'm like pretty good. And one of my favorite things, going back to Tim Ferriss that he talked about was like this idea of like becoming world class in something. He was like, I really think it only takes 6 months to become world class at something. And I was like, well, that's very fast. And he's like, yeah, but it's like, like to become world class, let's say like you need to be in the top 80% of something. Well, it's like to be in like the top 80% of most, language speakers of a particular language, you only need to know this many words. And most of those words can be like learned in whatever it is, like, whatever you call it, 6 months. Like if you actually like put through this effort, right? So it's like changing your perspective on something where it's like, oh yeah, like to actually be in the top 80% of whatever it is, it's not that difficult really to get into that level. Now going from there to like the 0.1%, right? It's like difference between being like, oh yeah, I'm really good at shooting 3-pointers and I'm Steph Curry, right, in the NBA. And it's like there's a very, very fine, there's a very, 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 very difficult gap from going from like, the top 10% to the 1%, and from the 1% to the 0.01 is like even harder.
Yeah.
But like you can still be really great at things. And I think where I'm going with this is, a lot of what I heard in your own journey has been, learning to love yourself and learning to come like home to who you are and embrace those pieces. And like, even if it's coming kicking and screaming, there's a sense of like, okay, cool. Like how, and then for you, it sounds like it's how more quickly can you, in a sense, like stop resisting what you're feeling or what you're seeing or what you're thinking and just like embrace those parts of yourself. Um, so yeah. And I guess my question with after all that would just be like, if you're open to sharing with whatever feels within like your comfort zone, like like what are some of the parts of yourself that have been, I don't know, some of the hardest to learn to love?
That was perfect timing on that sneeze there. Let's see. Anything to deflect from answering this question. I'm kidding. Kidding. So, what have been the hardest things? Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I'm very chatty Cathy.
Hmm.
Like, I love to talk. I talk for a living now, and I make money from speaking, which is so apropos because I have never been able to shut up. Like, this is not a thing. I'm just a talker. And I've always been a talker since I was little. But it was one of the things that it felt like I was judged for that when I was young and punished for that. In school, you got to be quiet. And I would, the teachers would try and put me on the spot and they would know I was talking. So they would ask a question. They'd ask me the question specifically, hoping that I get the question wrong so they could like embarrass me because I was talking.
Hmm.
But literally, I would answer the question because I was being present to what was being said. And I was also talking.
Hmm.
So it was kind of something that it was frowned upon. And I felt like my dad and I also, we butted heads for that exact reason. I was very outspoken and very loud. And so I think I had to learn how to love that about myself.
Hmm.
And I really was very drawn to becoming a speaker, but I was so afraid to speak, like
Hmm.
life and death afraid to speak. Couldn't introduce myself in a conference room of 5 people without my voice shaking, without
Wow.
stuttering. And now I make a lot of dough, a good amount of money to talk.
Hmm.
And so that was probably one of the biggest things I had to learn was to love my own voice and to love myself and to believe that what I have to say has value and meaning.
Yeah.
I think also beauty was a big breakthrough for me, feeling beautiful. I was on a date like maybe a couple months ago, and the guy said to me, and he asked it really seriously. It was really interesting. He was an interviewer for a living. So it was funny that he asked this question, but he asked, what does it feel like to be beautiful?
Hmm.
And I was not overly impressed, but I thought the question was really good. It was just like a juicy question. And I said, I don't know. I said, it feels good. Like I just was so neutral about it. And that's such big growth for me because
Hmm.
at the time, like when I was growing up, there weren't, there weren't Black people for the most part, Black women. Like we were the minority of the minority. Like you were not seeing
Hmm.
Black women on covers. That wasn't
Hmm.
a thing until like Oprah made it a thing. It was not a thing. It was like shocking when like Naomi hit a cover or Iman got a cover. It was some big huge
Hmm.
ordeal. I didn't think of myself as beautiful. I wasn't raised with a lot of other people of color in school. So I was like a minority in a minority.
Hmm.
And I didn't really understand, I think, most of my life what it quote unquote felt like to be beautiful. So I had to choose it. That's another thing I had to fall in love with. I had to fall in love with myself and choose beauty. Okay, I choose to believe I'm beautiful, even though I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And in that choosing over and over, now I do know. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm curious, and not to just throw off the same question that you've already had, but what does feeling beautiful feel like compared to just believing or thinking yourself of beautiful?
um, hmm, I think it's knowing there's nothing wrong with being beautiful is part of it. Because I think at the same time as the world wants you to be physically beautiful, I think the world also shames people who believe they're beautiful.
Mm.
Like, especially women. Like, oh, you think so much of yourself. You're superficial, or you're what's another word for superficial? There's a better word, but I can't
Like
think of it right
fake,
now.
essentially.
Yeah, you're fake. You're just like this superficial, vapid person.
Hmm.
But like, no, beauty, there is nothing wrong with knowing you're beautiful, as long as you're not walking around and being a jerk to people, right? And thinking that you are owed more than someone who may not have what we can see as physical beauty. And then also feeling it, to me, is nothing to do with what I look like,
Mm.
and everything to do with who I be, and
Mm.
knowing that who I am, whether I've got makeup on or don't. And I'm still working on that. I'm
Hmm.
not perfect, and I'm a triple Leo, y'all. So, I care about the aesthetic. Aesthetic. Oh, gosh. And at the same time, like, knowing that that's really about my inside. That's about
Mm.
who I am in my heart. And my beauty is in the relationships that I have. My beauty shows, it's a reflection on the outside of what's happening on the inside. I think I'm way more beautiful now than I used to be, mostly because I own my beauty, my internal
Mm.
beauty, and
Yeah.
mostly because I cultivate that. So, yeah.
Yeah. When you say you cultivate that, I would say it's like sense of inner beauty, like what does that mean or like look like?
When I love myself enough to say yes to the things that make me feel good, and say no to the things that abandon myself, that have me
Mm.
abandon myself, even if it means hurting someone else's feelings, even if it means saying the difficult thing. Every time I do that, I feel like I'm more worthy, and I feel more beautiful. I feel
Yeah.
like I matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. This makes me want to dig into a question that came up in some of your writing on your website and stuff. You mentioned about how the divorce that you had was a really pivotal moment for you. It sounds like around this almost kind of idea where you started to really, go from, I would say, people pleasing in some way to like really consciously creating this life that you want in a very intentional direction, like kind of opening to joy. Could you talk about like what it was you're experiencing and then what you were able to create from that moment?
So there have been two divorces.
Hmm.
And so, and they were both pivotal. What I experienced and what I was able to create from that moment. So, I mean, I experienced a lot of pain. The first divorce was to leave an abusive relationship. And I was in it for a very, very long time.
How old were you when you got married?
I mean, it was my first boyfriend. So I met him when I was 18. So we were together from like maybe 18, 19. Things ended officially at 31.
Hmm.
So it was a mess. It was on and off and just a hot mess express. But we got married when I was 23, I believe, the first time. And then we did a public, like, big wedding on Madison Avenue when I was
Hmm.
30. And then it ended at 31. Anyways, like, I can laugh about it now. It was very, very painful. It was very difficult, very painful. And it was, for whatever reason, what I needed to be the person that I am. What I learned so I've thought this through, y'all. I didn't even know this was gonna be a question, but I've thought this through for a long time. What I learned from that first divorce was um to love myself and release guilt, and not just because you understand why someone is the way that they are does not mean you need to make concessions for yourself. You need to make that the reason why it's okay for you to be mistreated. So that was the biggest thing. Like,
Hmm.
doesn't matter if I understand and I know why this person is the way they are. If it equals mistreating me, I'm out. That
Hmm.
took me 13 plus years to figure. I think about 13 years to figure out, but I did.
Yeah.
So I was out. The second divorce, that was in a way harder. In its own way, I guess it was harder, because I really adored this person, and he's a great guy. And he wasn't all in all abusive. I think what I learned there was that was more that was just as much about me as it was about him. So none of this is letting this other person off the hook, but from ownership and responsibility, I think I didn't know enough of who I was. And I was very good at folding myself into another person's life and another person's projection of who I am or should be. And so I don't think from the beginning I was authentically showing up in my values, in my true vision, who I really am. I think he was shocked that he found out I wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was stunned when he was like, "What do you mean you're spiritual? What is this?"
Mm.
He was personal develop what? Like he was so unavailable. Growth mindset. No, 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 no. Like he's a fixed mindset person. He
Mm.
is who he is, and I respect that. We're just different. But I don't think I knew myself enough. And
Mm.
so part of it is perhaps I could have stayed and we could have continued to duke it out until one of us won or lost or whatever, or we merged into each other. But it just wasn't healthy. And we had very different values. So what it taught me was to know myself and to honor my values as being okay.
Mhm.
Accept my values are fine. Don't judge that you're to this or you're to that, or it's weird that you want this, or weird that you believe that, or weird that this thing. Just accept all of you and
Mm.
then show the person all of you. And if
Mm.
they accept you too, then and you accept them, then you're good to go. But if you are in a fight with yourself, a battle with yourself about who you
Mhm.
truly are, you're going to attract someone who does not fully accept and understand who you are. And vice versa, you probably underneath it all don't accept and understand who they are.
Yeah, no, that resonates super hard because that's something that has been a big growth edge for me, especially like over the last couple of years. But and it's something I always felt, but I always had a hard time with is like that sense of, um, especially for me, at least as a guy, like there's a lot of stuff around like here's how a man is supposed to be, or how you're supposed to behave, or like whatever it is, right? Like you need to be this alpha person, and so like there can be this sense of like trying to live into an image that is not actually me, right? But then to risk being me feels actually deathly terrifying, right? Because it's one thing for somebody to reject like the part of me that I know is not actually me, but to then actually put my vulnerable self out there and get rejected for that feels like a death on a different level. Because what if I find out that people really don't like me? And the other one, I can at least live in the illusion that, well, if I could be myself, then people would really love me, but I just can't be, right? But then to actually put yourself out there is like terrifying. And at the same time, to your point, like, you can't get loved for yourself if you're not putting yourself out there. You cannot like find people that want you for you if you're willing to conform who you are to other people. There's like a really viral piece from Brene Brown where she's talking about how the research on like to feel like you belong is inversely correlated with the feeling of with fitting in, right? So you cannot belong, you cannot have a feeling of belonging if you are trying to fit in. You have to be able to be yourself and not fit in to get a sense of belonging, because otherwise, to your point, you're rejecting these pieces of yourself.
Yeah.
um so I love that. And one of the things you talked about was like, okay, cool. Now you're able to like embrace your spirituality, all these different parts of yourself. You're putting yourself out there. You're like, maybe you're able to attract like these other partners or partner that you want. Like, what did stepping into your authenticity start to bring you, and what were you able to create with yourself once you were able to like anchor into that moving forward?
Ooh, so juicy. First of all, I love Renee. She's just so good. So good. I love that. I love that idea about not fitting in. Um, so what have I attracted by becoming more authentic? First of all, it's a practice. So authenticity and vulnerability and choosing to stand out rather than fit in goes against all of the conversations that have kept me safe up till now. Perfectionism, comparison, I'm not enough. So I need to do more. Morphing myself into this perfect, fake, phony person
Mhm.
to be liked, all of those things. So authenticity and vulnerability goes directly against those things. So it's
Mhm.
those two things are a practice. I practice authenticity. I practice vulnerability. Um, and when I practice that, so I'm not perfect, but as I stretch, and I stretch also, which means I get to a threshold and then I keep stretching. I do
Mm,
something else that makes me uncomfortable. I
mm,
go a little deeper uh, in the authenticity. I go a little deeper in the vulnerability.
mm,
And as I stretch, it becomes more comfortable. And what have I attracted? I've attracted the right clients. It's kind of insane. I've attracted clients that become, this is going to sound so almost like it's going to sound not modest, but I'm not here to be modest. I'm here to be transparent. And this is vulnerable. So I'm just going to say it.
mhm,
I have attracted clients that become fans.
mm,
Literally, they become such a supporter of my work that they go out and they evangelize me. I don't even
wow.
have to do work. They're going into spaces that I'm not in. I've had like executives go into private executive spaces and evangelize me and my company. And then we get a bunch of calls.
Mm,
Like people become not only your friend or your client or your significant other, they become a supporter. They become
mm.
a fan. They become the wind beneath your wing.
Right.
Oh, cheesy, but it's not true.
Yeah, no, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Like I've talked about this a couple times, but I think one of the reasons that like I know we've been going through a recession of sorts, especially like in a lot of the internet or coaching space where there has been a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of why that exists is because a lot of people got really, really good at marketing, and a lot of people really got like no one ever got really good at selling of actually creating a good product, right?
Mm,
And when you don't have product, um, product is what builds trust. Like or maintains trust, right? So like you can sell something and you can market something, you can get a bunch of people to buy, and you can make a lot of money that way. But if you're not delivering, then people aren't coming back, and so you're always having to chase like a new client pool, right? Versus like, oh, if you actually deliver something that people want, it will withstand a recession because what happens in a recession is people have less money, so they're just choosing more studiously on what to spend their money on. So if your thing is like producing the result or a change, then like people are going to want more of that thing because they want what you have. But then it's also on a deeper level of trust because it's like if you have a great product, then people are going to evangelize it. People are going to tell you. And then if you add marketing on top of that, right now it's like, cool, now I can get this thing to grow because I have this thing that works. But like so many people, I feel, and like I also can understand the inverse corollary because it's like if you know how to market, if you know how to bring in money, you can have money, which means you can experiment and get your thing to be better eventually. Da, da, da. So there's always like a back and forth. It's not a binary thing. But like when you're doing what you're doing, where you're talking, you're caring so much about what you do, when you step into that authentically and like really own it and own the fact that you're a competent person in this particular avenue, right? And even know like where your limitations are, where you're like, this is not that's not my space. This is my space. I can own this and then create these results with their clients. It's going to lead to that cascading effect of them bringing more people in, of your reputation building, of people trusting you more, which is why I think anybody ever buys from somebody is because they trust you.
yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, that shows up certainly. I gave the example of like a work related example or business related example, but there's also what that attracts in my personal life. So it's a little easy when it's in my business to
Mm,
lean into the discomfort of being seen. And that feels much more, it's feeling easier and easier and easier, right? I've been doing it for many years. Now, doing that with dating is
mm,
definitely trickier, definitely more closer to like my heart. And so that's a little scary. But what I've found it has attracted is it has attracted more like-minded people. And even if they're not like-minded, meaning we may not see life the same way, there's a level of respect because I think subconsciously, as much as consciously, people feel energy, they experience authenticity. They don't just, I think authenticity, that's it, is that is experienced by others. So they may not even be able to put words to it or put a finger on why it feels off with someone or it feels okay and safe with someone, but a lot of that has to do with authenticity. So if there's a misalignment where I'm showing up a certain way and it's not truly who I am, then there's like a lack of, there is always going to be a misalignment there with like how the other person experiences me, you know? So I get
Yeah.
more respect now that I'm just who I am and my boundaries
Mm.
are clear and I know myself and I communicate. And if you're not into it, I'm good with you walking away. That feels great. It actually feels like a relief to me.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
attracting a lot of the better quality of connections.
Yeah. Great. I mean, and it sounds like what I hear in that too is like once you're starting to essentially respect yourself, right? Once you're like honoring of who you are, then like you're finding people who are also going to respect or honor those things as well, right? One of the things you have talked about too is like reinventing yourself at 40, and so you're reinventing yourself and you're dating at 40. You're going through these experiences. What are you finding? I guess what do I want to ask? Why is dating so important to you right now at this age?
Um, well, because my intention is to meet my life partner.
Mm.
And that to me means marriage. I still think of marriage as something very sacred. And so I'm dating with that very clear intention. It's not this, oh my God, I need to marry someone by a certain time. It's more, I'm available to see who's out there and connect with a lot of different people. And my partner will find me.
Mm.
Like my partner will show himself. And yeah, we'll attract each other. So why is it important? That's why it's important for me to date. It's also been important for me to, and honestly, at this point, I could take dating or not. Like if I meet him in the street and we just happen to be doing a thing, who knows? Like I could be in a grocery
Yeah.
store, but it doesn't have to be a whole thing. But dating seems, it's just the way, the mechanism right
Sure,
now.
sure, sure, sure.
Date, right? So like, okay, cool. But one of the really most powerful things that I've gotten from dating is an opportunity
Mm.
to practice authenticity and to practice vulnerability
Mm.
and to practice sharing how I feel. And that hasn't always been okay to share how I feel. That hasn't been my experience. Some women know what that feels like from a very young age because their dads were like so, available to hear how they felt. That wasn't my
Mm.
experience with my dad. So hashtag daddy issue. Like that has required a lot of healing, which I've been
Sure.
doing. But like, yeah, now it's me practicing to feel safe enough to share how I feel and to let the person show up for me or not.
Mm.
Like that's what dating has given me. It's been such a it's because it's given me
Yeah.
the opportunity to practice authenticity and practice vulnerability. And
Yeah.
that's femininity in and of itself, which is another huge return to home for me.
Mm.
So yeah, good.
Yeah. You did mention earlier that like the vulnerability, the authenticity, that is a more challenging thing for you to do within the dating space compared to showing up online or being in your business and like bringing that like why do you feel like it is more challenging in a space with like an intimate partner than it is with like your business or your creation for yourself?
Well, because that person I think has more it's easier for that person to hurt
Mm.
me. Right? I was gonna say you. I was going to project because that feels more comfortable. But hey, we're talking about vulnerability. Is vulnerable? But yeah, I think there's more of an opportunity for someone to hurt me.
Mm.
So when it's in the dating world, and also what I'm learning is like, I'm the only person who can give someone the power to hurt me.
Mm.
So that's also been super, super powerful, which dating has given me that too. That recognition that not everybody gets to have that level of access to me until I decide that that's where I want the relationship to go.
Mm.
But I definitely think it's more uncomfortable because maybe it's one-on-one and it's not performative. Like sometimes even at vulnerability, it feels a little scary, but it's still a performance when I'm on
Mm.
stage to a degree, right? It's like I choose vulnerability and then I perform vulnerability. It's like both
Mm.
when I'm on
Right, right.
stage. But when I'm in a one-on-one scenario with someone that I actually want to see me, because if
Mm.
they see me and know me and vice versa, that means that there's more of an opportunity for us to know who we really are and to see if we could grow into a thing.
Yeah.
So that's much more delicate. It's much more personal and intimate.
Mm.
It's like the first step of intimacy. I
That's
got there. I
fair.
got there in the end.
No, you're good. Yeah, because it's really fascinating. Because I think what I hear in that is like with your business and stuff, right? On some level, we're still showcasing the best parts of ourselves, right? Like we're still showcasing, even when in our vulnerability, even in our whatever, there's still parts of ourselves that like this level of intimacy is what's available for people who, tune into my Instagram. This level is a little bit more deeper who goes to my newsletter, and this level is deeper for like the one-on-one clients, right? But there's also parts of ourselves that within those relationships, to your point, like maybe there's not a level of appropriateness to talk about these things, or there's not a level of safety that I feel to have this. Whereas with an intimate partner, we are letting them into, at least hypothetically, these more, um, you know, I want to say not scary parts of ourselves, but the sensitive parts of ourselves, right? The parts that we're like, hey, like, can somebody actually handle this part of me? Are they going to reject me for that? And so it can be easier to maybe want to cover up in front of those people, or look a particular way, or in a sense, like almost like having to perform work the entire time, rather than having the space be like a space where you can actually let go and be soft and like, be in your sweats and cozies or whatever it is for the day.
Yeah. There's something really profound you just said that I just wanted to highlight, which was, let me see if I can remember. Letting yourself be seen. Oh, I missed it. It's gone. Poof,
It
there
was,
it went.
it was something I said something. I saw your eyes light up. So something about like I think the sensitivity and like people see the sensitive parts of you, and um, I guess the I said something about performing at work.
Yeah,
Like
but
how
you're not performing when you're with someone. The idea is to not perform. That was one, but it was right before
mm,
that. The performance was like the next thing. Damn it. It was so good. But we'll just have to do a part two.
we could definitely do a part two at some point. Um, yeah, I wanted to ask on your website, on your bio, you talk about 3 books that radically changed your life. And I wanted to know if you were open to sharing about why these 3 books stood out to you. So I don't know if you remember the 3 books, but I wrote them
I'm
down.
gonna
So
try. I'm gonna try to remember them. I feel like so You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay is one of them.
mhm.
Maybe The Alchemist.
Nope,
Oh. Maybe it's Declutter Your Life by Gail Thozum.
nope.
No. What are the other two?
So the first one was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. The
I've
second one was
read so many books, you guys. We'd be here all day if I don't ask him. But
the second book was A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
oh, chapter 8. Keep going.
And then the third book was Peace from Broken Pieces by Ianya.
Iyanla Van Zant.
Yeah, Van Zandt. Yeah. So those were the 3 books. I'm curious, why were those the 3 books that you credited to this powerful shift in your life?
Yeah, so You Can Heal Your Life was the first book. I read it in 2008 after my first divorce and after I had quit a job. The first time I ever quit, I walked off a job.
Hmm.
It's one of the best decisions I've ever made, even though I don't advise it. It's not ideal. But yeah, it was such an amazing moment in my life. So You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay was the first personal development book I ever read. And she's a metaphysical, she's a metaphysical person. It just kind of opened my eyes to a different way to look at the world. I didn't know the world could be that way, where I had so much power over the things that were quote unquote happening to me. So that book was like, it blew my mind open. It was almost like it created a portal to a new life, like a different dimension of living. That's how I saw that book. Um, Peace from Broken Pieces. At the end of the day, Iyanla is she's like a prophet
Hmm.
in the way that she speaks, in the way that she makes me think of like an orator. And there's just such a beautiful, prayerful way that she looks at suffering and shifting the way that we see suffering and to create, no matter how bad it is, no matter what kind of trauma, that we can create peace from it. It can always happen. So that was the second. And then what was the other book?
The other book was A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it's so funny because most people love the power of now.
Hmm.
And I would say the power of now is probably an easier read than A New Earth, but I believe it's chapter 8 in A New Earth. I could be wrong, but whatever chapter he talks about the pain body, that chapter was another portal into a different perspective. He talks about the pain body, meaning that so before we before we get conscious, not before we come into being, I just mean before we become the type of people who are aware, right? Before we become self-aware, before we become conscious, we have this like, it's like the two wolves that you can feed. So we
Mm.
have this almost a body inside of us, and it's called the pain body. He describes it way better than I will, but like we constantly, our lower vibrational self, our normal human selves will do everything in its power to feed the pain body. So, because the pain body needs to feed, it needs more pain. So, it's the people that you know that are drama queen. I was one. I'm a recovering drama queen. So, like, that's the person that constantly, or the person who's constantly disappointed,
Mm.
or the person who's constantly angry, or the person who's constantly complaining. Now, they're not wrong for complaining. They have things that are disappointing in their life, things that piss them off. These are real things.
Mm.
But it's almost like they feed the pain body, that part of you that is the drama queen, who's not in accountability, not in ownership, the part of you who needs something to blame, the part of you who is a victim, will find those parts of your life and feed the pain with it. And it needs to eat, so it will find more pain to
Mm.
feed that part of their body.
Mm.
Until you decide to starve the pain body, you will not be able to live a life of freedom. You're constantly going to be fill in the blank, angry, sad, depressed, anxious, dejected, all those things. And I've been all those things at different times in my life, so I know what that felt like. And the way that he articulates the concept made me understand it a different way.
Mm.
And I just realized how the way that I was seeing life was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I was feeding my own pain. So
Right.
yeah, Eckhart is serious business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of what I heard in that one, right, is that you're seeing like your own self-fulfilling prophecy play out with like, here are these things that cause me pain, here's where I can't be successful, here's where I can't whatever. And like, for anybody who's maybe more scientifically minded, I would maybe encourage you to look at it from the lens of um you know personal bias. I forget what the term is, but there's a
Confirmation.
psychological confirmation bias. Yeah, and there's a psychological another psychological term for it, or like a brain mechanism. But like, where whatever you're believing in, like your consciousness will seek and find out and like make it to be true, right? And it will look for those patterns. So if you are believing in yourself to be an XYZ person, you're gonna find things and like often like hyper fixate on them, right? Like, so that's one of the things with like, it's because it becomes like that is the all of who you are, is this one bad thing that happened to you or that you did or whatever it is. And it's like, no, dude, you're like a person, and that's like one thing that happened in this giant pool of all of the other things you did.
Yeah.
And it was just this one like giant, that one thing that happened. And we can make so much incredible meaning out of it, that, to your point, we are seeking out that pain, or we're finding another way. And it is like through a conscious change that often, to your point, I think precipitates typically like the thing being there. It's like, right when you're able to believe that, like, and I want to say, like, I don't even necessarily like the word believe, but like the sense of really getting yourself to really feel and own and be someone who is worth whatever you are, or to act in accordance to be somebody who is in integrity with yourself. Like, it's going to draw people who respect that integrity, because you're living into that life. Because when you are operating it, it changes your behaviors, right? And then when you're feeling into that space and you believe in those things, you look at somebody with confidence instead of like darting your eyes away because, oh no, I'm a bad person. So then now I need to like hide. We change all these behaviors because of how we feel and believe about ourselves, which is, and it's always a challenging piece, I would say, because there is this like double-edged paradoxical sword to it, right? Of like how to navigate that stuff and dance with it. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
My dog is literally sitting outside the door. Like he's been there for probably 15 minutes. Like, please let me in here. He's so cute.
I
So
mean,
sad.
so you can let him in if you want to let him
I
in.
think I need to get up and grab him.
Yeah,
So
yeah, go
give me
ahead.
5 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, wait. I'm gonna make an appearance.
Beautiful.
Do
And
you
what?
see?
Yeah, yeah. What's the puppy's name?
He's a Chiman Pin. He's a Chihuahua miniature pinscher. This is Prince.
Hi, Prince.
He's an old man. I told him not to get old, but he didn't listen.
He's rebellious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Magalie, this has been super great. I have a couple of other questions. One is that, like, I know you teach on compassionate leadership and talk a lot about like confidence, and these are two areas where you've helped a lot of people really grow and develop. And I was curious, just from your own perspective, like, what is compassion, and then why is compassion important?
Um, Compassion is about being clear and kind. So clear with your intentions, clear with your communication, um, and clear with clear with your actions, your behaviors, your intentions, everything is aligned. And then also being kind. So being graceful to yourself, giving others grace. And I like clear and kind. I just heard that from a client and I go, I'm hijacking. And it was like literally the meeting before this. So it's just so people to just answer. Um, but yeah, clear and kind. Like we give grace to others, give grace to ourselves. We forgive others, we forgive ourselves. And we're not enablers. That
Mm,
isn't compassion, right? It has to have
mm,
confidence in there. You've got to have a sense of yourself, a sense of integrity, a sense of what the outcome gets to be. And you get to hold that ability, boundaries, all that, along with kindness and presence for people and yourself.
yeah.
So that combined, I think, is what compassion is.
Yeah, I love that. Like, even when you said that we are not enablers, like, 'cause, I mean, from a compassionate standpoint, like how could it be compassion if you are continuing to enable a behavior that you know is like hurting somebody else, or hurting yourself, right? So if you are participating actively and like the thing that you know you need to do is to remove yourself or whatever it is, then like that is the most compassionate thing, because you want yourself and that other person to get better, and you cannot continue that if you're just, mending somebody's wounds for them to attack you again.
Of course. And there's a lack of, and thinking that compassion is enabling, it's just so backwards, but it's how a lot of people see compassion, but that's pity. I'm not talking about pity and sympathy. I'm talking about empathy,
Hmm.
which is very active. And it's accountability is a part of that. Holding people high is a part of that. Not
Hmm.
settling for BS is a part of that. Calling bullshit with bullshit. It's like a part of that. So I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit nuanced, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I don't remember. I feel like this might have even been somebody that we knew who said this, but it was like, I love the phrase like compassion without action is pity,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah. What I
um, yeah. And then I guess the other one is like, what is confidence to you? What does it mean to be confident?
do. I think to be confident is knowing who you are, accepting who you are, and being able to walk in the world that way. Being able to walk in the world knowing who you are and accepting who you are. That's it. It's pretty, yeah, it's that simple. It doesn't feel simple, but I think it's that simple.
Beautiful. And I think that connects to a lot of the pieces you've talked about. So I think that makes a lot of sense with this episode. And then, Magalie, the last question I ask all of my guests on this show is, what's one question that you would have for the audience that might shift their perspective or have them think about something in a different way?
A question that they can ask themselves.
Yeah, just or a question that you have to ask them, basically. Yeah. But yeah, they can ask themselves either way.
What makes your higher self feel good?
Beautiful. Magalie, if people want to stick around and find you elsewhere after here, what's the best way to do that?
They can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, either one. So it's like my professional world and then all of the other things. So on Instagram, it's Magalie_Renee, Magalie_Rene. And then on LinkedIn, Magalie Renee.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thanks, Magalie. It's been a pleasure to dance around with you for a bit, and we'll have to do this again soon.
It was phenomenal. Thanks for having me.